Okay, we're going to work a spall today. Basically, spalls are nothing but big flakes that have been removed from a core. Usually, for me, when I'm bifacing or I'm making a big blade, I get these large flakes. We'll call them spalls. Nice thing about working a spall, it's got a nice, pretty much sharp edge all the way around for the most part. And that's kind of an advantage. You don't have to create your edge, as opposed to when you work in a chunk like this, where you've got to get into it usually with a hammerstone and start zigzagging back and forth in order to create a kind of a jagged edge around it. You've already got that pretty much started on these spalls, so that's kind of an advantage. Disadvantage is that these thin areas over here are pretty weak around these spalls, and a lot of times when you're doing percussion on them, they'll crack and fracture. So the toolkit we're going to use today is going to be Aboriginal. I'm going to start off with some direct percussion here, but mostly what I want to show is this indirect percussion that Marty uses. If you've seen his video, flintknapping tips, you'll know what I mean. It's really an effective method. He's got one on making a Clovis there. So these are some of my punches right here. This large one is for large flakes, a little bit smaller. Smaller still, you can see the notch in the end of it here, and this is for my smallest flakes. Just a really small punch. I'll be hitting these punches with these billets right here, some abraders right here. So we'll get started here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and use this larger spall here. It's a pretty nice spall. This is dacite. I think it'll show up better in the video being large like this. So the first thing, get rid of these sharp edges so they won't cut you, and also so that you have a thicker edge in order to drive off some nice large thinning flakes. Really thin edges like that just can't support the blow from the billet. And when we get some nice platforms set up for indirect using that punch, we'll do that. To start with though, I just like to kind of true it up a little bit with a direct percussion. The antler billet works really good on these spalls because the edges are already sharp, and if you're using copper, you'd have to do a little bit of abrading for the most part, and the antler is pretty forgiving in that regard. This is a whitetail billet, nice and hard, almost as hard as ivory, not quite, but small billet. It's nice for these short little steep flakes that are taken off here. Alright, we're getting rid of that skinny edge, that thin, sharp, razor sharp edge. And we'll hold it up sideways and see where we need to take some mass. I can see we got a nice ridge right there. Ordinarily I just hit it with a billet, but I think we'll go ahead and do this one with indirect just to demonstrate the technique. You got to set up these isolated platforms for indirect, at least I do, or to get them to release. Alright. There's our platform. Got a nice ridge. And drive it back over into this area right here. I like to support it with a leather pad in my hand. I wasn't doing that at first, and it works okay without it, of course, but I tend to cut my fingers quite a bit because you're jamming it in so tight, holding that back edge. I'm holding the back edge, pushing it directly toward the notch in this punch right here, and I'm going to use a pretty big moose billet here to drive that thing in. I've got my fingers back here, nothing touching that face, so that this thing can terminate in the feather termination. Platform last time. Let me rebuild that. We'll get it. Try again. Hold it on there really tight. Alright, one over here, did the job. Like I said, ordinarily I'd just go ahead and do that with direct percussion with a billet, but just for demonstration purposes. I think I'll take another one off, same thing. Use the punch, just to demonstrate how it works. The abrasion is to keep that punch from, keep that edge from digging out the notch in there, chewing it up. You also want to check that notch all the time, make sure there's no embedded chert or flint or anything in there. Alright, there it is. Try and drive it down into this area right here. So I got my hand back in here, nothing touching this area. Takes a lot of force, like I said, to drive it in there like that. Pushing hard. Not as far as I wanted it to go. Suck another one here. This one will go. Pretty well across it. Getting down to the point now where I need to abrade these edges a little bit. I like that whitetail better. Definitely a little bit harder surface on it. Pads are going all over the place here. Alright. We've got a nice high area right in here I think we can take a flake off of. Nice isolated platform. Braid it. Don't want it to be too wide. It's one of the drawbacks of this technique that you do have to isolate these platforms, but it pays off. We'll try and drive one over this back edge right here. So I'm going to support it like that on my leg. This notch is not the best. I probably should refile it, but pushing pretty hard and driving it in. Alright, it went to there anyway. Left part of the platform on there. I'll set up